Hello and welcome to the Joy CEO podcast. I'm your host, Lori Pine, and I am so thrilled to have with you today, Ira Gleser. Ira is a dear friend and former colleague. We worked together at the Coca-Cola company. We worked on an enormous project together that was highly successful, if I must say so myself. And so it is with great pleasure that I get to introduce you to my friend, Ira. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Lori. It's no pun intended. It's a joy to be with you today.
Well, it is certainly a joy to be with you today. And it's been a while since we had been in touch. And I, of course, reached out to you because you are now a #1 Amazon best-selling author.
Yeah.
Ira, congratulations. Wow. Talk about joy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's fun.
How's that feel?
It feels good. You know, it's like anything you're really passionate about or something you keep saying, I really want to get this done, whether it's a workout or you want to try a new recipe or you want to write a book. It's how you feel when it comes out of the oven and you put it on the table and say, wow, I did that. And it actually tastes pretty good too. So it's been very gratifying. Thank you for asking.
Well, I have to say, I'm actually not surprised that your creation came out of the oven and was very well received by the world, because you have really had this great career and you have a lot to share with the world. And when you combine that with being trained by some of the world's greatest companies, that alone is a recipe for success. So let's just talk a little bit about you, what you've done, and some of this really great history.
Sure. You know, I still enjoy talking about so many things other than talking about me. But for you, I'll keep it short and sweet.
Thank you.
I appreciate what you just said. Look, I've been very fortunate and very blessed. It's been an interesting journey. I've met some amazing people along the way. And I've also been fortunate. I had some tremendous leaders. I had some excellent managers, and I had mentors. And mentorship is so important. And at this point in my journey, I'm trying to be a mentor to younger folks. I'm trying to pay it forward because it had such an impact on my journey. We used to call it an elevator speech, but since we're not all back in the office, who's getting on elevators to go to work? But it used to be I'm a marketer who knows how to sell. I wonder at this point in my career if maybe I've been fooling myself. Maybe I'm just a salesperson that knows how to market. But either way, and I know you can relate to that, I spent most of my journey, Lori, in really 3 areas: marketing, communications, business development, mostly on the business to business side. Although I did learn all about brands at probably the greatest university on the planet, the Coca-Cola company.
Yes.
But the common thread throughout my journey has been clients and customers, because ultimately I've sold everything from soft drinks to cloud platforms, from AI to vice grip wrenches and painting tools, and financial services and probably a few other things.
I saw that. You started out at Charles Schwab.
I've done a lot of things.
You've done it all.
My one favorite story about Charles Schwab, and I'll keep it short and sweet, is my team did a lot of work putting on events for affluent consumers. Not a bad gig, but I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Schwab. So Mr. Schwab was the Coca-Cola can, except he was a person.
A person.
And our badges on. He walked up to me and he looked at my badge. He said, "Okay, what's your real name?" "No, that's my name." He said. He shook my hand. We got an amazing human being. He said, "Let me tell you something. We'll see each other again at other events. I will never forget your name because, we sell IRAs." I said, "Yes, sir." That's my one Charles Schwab story.
You're a walking product.
He was the brand. But the common thread's really been clients and customers, whether it was reaching them with engaging messaging, really trying to connect with them in person, in print, online. That's been the common thread. And it's been a passion of mine because, like you, I had some great training earlier in my career. I think some of the best sales training on the planet. And what I've done on my journey was really back to recipes, kind of added, my own special ingredients and tried to make it work for me. And what I say is I put together a playbook that, regardless of my situation, the brand I was affiliated with, and even when I started my own consultancy, The playbook is the playbook. And it's something I know we're going to talk about here over the next few minutes. It all comes back to relationships and building trust. It really does. And so that's been a passion point of mine. And it's been a fun journey for sure.
Yes. There's people who are going to listen to this episode that are in all stages of their career. So at what point in your career did you know that you actually had a playbook?
That's a great question. I knew you were going to ask me great questions. I would say when I really started to get out there and put the world of Coca-Cola behind me, it was a wonderful world, and starting to work with some other organizations. And really, when I started my own consultancy, what I found is that the situations I walked into or the opportunities that presented themselves, I always use the analogy, wait a minute, I've been to this movie before, and in the original movie, it was Burt Lancaster or it was Steve McQueen. Now it's some new actor, but like the movie The Getaway, great original, Steve McQueen, Ally McGraw, then they remade it, but it's the same movie. So when you find yourself in those similar situations, you say, wait a minute, what did I do last time? I don't want to go off the cliff like Thelma and Louise. Sorry for all the movie analogies. And fall back on what worked.
Right.
And it might need a different coat of paint or it might need to be tweaked a little bit. But one of the great things about having had a lot of experiences is you trust your gut more. And if your gut says, hey, we had a customer like this before, here's how we might want to approach her this time. So we really engage. It wasn't a lot of reinventing the wheel. The other part of that, because I'm anticipating you're going to ask me this, the other part of this was how you incorporate that into coaching others, particularly when I was in management roles. You may see the vision, but you have to take that extra time to coach so that folks can see the same vision that you have from the experience that you brought to the table.
Yes. And if you don't, they're so disconnected to the why. And you can't understand as a leader why your team's not motivated, why they're not going after the goal, right? Like that you want them to with the same passion and fervor that you have. But it's because there's that disconnect, that because you haven't taken the time to explain the why and coach them into the same vision that you now have. That is such a critical part and such an important insight.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. I'm with you 100%. The why is so important. And I think part of how you convey the why is through storytelling, which is another word I've used in my elevator introduction. I don't think storytelling ever goes out of style. Storytelling started back in the days of the caveman on the walls. Now, the challenge today is we're all barraged with so much information. Our ability to really process a good story takes time to tell. It's hard to tell it in 200 characters or a 90-second video, although we've all gotten better at it. But somehow, for me, what worked is I would answer the why with storytelling. I would, back in the day when you and I were interviewing for corporate jobs, there was a format called STAR, situation, action, result. And I would use that format to say, look, here's what I think the approach should be. Let's talk about the why. And to help dimensionalize the why, I would tell stories. And I would also self-deprecate a little bit and say, okay, look, everybody, a good story is going to take a little bit, just like a great joke takes a little bit. But I think that's how you make the why entertaining. And I think people want to hear real examples of what it's like out there in the marketplace. We're all trying to sell something to somebody at some point.
Yes, we certainly are. And storytelling really can change how you feel about a situation, how you feel about a person. When a story connects with you and you can lock into it, I mean, it just brings it to life for you. There's so many stories that I've repeated because I've heard told from a good keynote or a good training or a good leader, because they made an impact. I could visually connect with whatever it was meant for me to connect with. So I think you're right. Like the power of storytelling cannot be undersold.
It really can't. And not to jump ahead, in this transactional world we find ourselves in now, we're missing the human element. I was on a call earlier today. I'll leave out the why, but what made the call great is we spent a few minutes on the human element. We told each other stories. We found common ground. And then and only then did we commence to have, the conversation that we were scheduled to have. Too often, I think when we jump right into it, we're missing an opportunity to connect as people. And, when the call's over, the meeting's over, how do you want to be remembered? Do you want to be remembered as, Mr. Transactional, or, wow, that was a great story he told about fill in the blank? And that artfulness, that skill, I fear, is not being taught the way you and I were taught.
Right.
Because that connects to building trust and building great relationships, is how you're remembered and what kind of reputation you build for yourself.
Yes. Yes. So good. So true. In this AI world where we just really want to connect with people post-COVID, I think it's so important. Okay, so I met you at a time when we were working on an initiative at the Coca-Cola company.
Yep.
We were in two very different departments, but we really set out to do something rather remarkable. And I think, Ira, it's because you knew some of your own unique abilities and this special sauce, if you will, that you could bring to a project that really brought that project to life in a way that without you on the project, it just wouldn't have been that special. So let's share with everybody what we worked on.
Are we going to name names, or are we going to keep this?
We'll name names.
Okay, sure. Okay.
Give credit where credit's due.
First of all, you're being very kind and gracious, because I think part of the reason this was wildly successful is we had a little band of people that were all passionate and wanted to win, and everybody leveraged each other's unique expertise.
Yes.
And there were no egos in the room. And that's, I think, what made it super special. And when I go through my ESPN Sports Center top 10 of my career, what we're going to talk about here for the next minute is it's top 5 because of those reasons. So the opportunity was really simple. The Coca-Cola business is not complicated. It's all about getting Coca-Cola products in the hands of the consumer. And you get there by going through retailers or restaurants or stadiums, any place where people might enjoy a beverage of some sort while they're being entertained. The challenge of the business in that value chain is, how do you build those trusted relationships with those retailers, operators, et cetera, and make them feel good about partnering with you? And we could spend the rest of our time talking about that, and that's where things get a little complicated. But the headline is, this was an opportunity to really plow some new ground, an area that Coca-Cola really had not delved into. And so it was a combination of having the team that you are part of called New Business Development, which got my attention immediately, because, wait, we work at a 100-plus-year-old company, and we're going to go find some new ground to plow.
Yes.
That's pretty exciting. And then it was bringing the playbook of, okay, here's an organization called the National Retail Federation, the most respected retail association on the planet, that puts on one of the largest conferences in the United States every January in freezing cold New York City.
Freezing cold, sub-zero.
Sub-zero. So wait a second, Coca-Cola goes to lots of trade shows and conferences, but hasn't really done anything with National Retail Federation. And then it was a colleague of yours, who we're not going to name because he's getting enough PR as it is.
We love you, Justin.
Who said, hey, I'm speaking at this retail thing in New York. You should come up and check it out. So he was really the catalyst. And I remember sitting in the room watching Justin and a few other of my colleagues give this talk to a packed house. And the thought just hit me, why aren't we more involved here? Because there are a lot of retailers that attend this conference that have never thought about carrying soft drinks or bottled water or anything. And in the spirit of creating great shopping experiences for consumers, it's not you don't need a PhD to make that connection. So really just having some conversation and exploring the opportunity and leaving out a lot of detail here. The concept was very simply that we wanted to come in a big way, and we wanted to create a destination. And the big idea, the creative idea was this. At the time, and I'm going to date myself, Coca-Cola's national ad campaign was Open Happiness.
Yes.
By the way, great campaign.
Yeah.
Because it was all about hitting on the extrinsics of how, most of the time we enjoy soft drinks with our friends and our family. That was the big idea. So we went in and said, hey, we want to take this 250,000 square foot area at the Javits Center, and we're going to turn it into a happiness lounge. And we're going to use it as a way to showcase everything that the Coca-Cola company can bring to you, the retailer, that's going to engage your shoppers, grow your business, and demonstrate that, soft drinks might have a meaningful, profitable role to play for your business. So we literally set up, and I don't think it had ever been done,
Never.
where a National Retail Federation attendee could walk into this hall that was painted red and literally could just take a tour of every way the Coca-Cola company supports their customers. And that was the big idea. And the way we brought it to life was partnering with you and the new business development team and, passing the cup to get funding so we could pull this thing off. And if I'm not mistaken, Lori, without looking at my notes, it was one of the highest ROIs, return on investment, that I've ever seen for any event or sponsorship or activation I was ever part of. I remember it was something on the order of 300%. Which basically means we went in saying, and in Coke speak, we used to call them dry accounts, right? One that comes to mind is Pier 1. I don't think about buying a soft drink when I'm shopping at Pier 1, but you put a little display of smart water by the checkout stand and a shopper might say, I'm really thirsty and it's 95 degrees outside. This is great. I'm going to grab a smart water. But we were able to convert a great deal of new business, thanks, of course, to you and your former colleagues, but also just by having, a strategy and the right messaging and doing it in a way that only Coca-Cola could do. That's my attempt at a quick summary of that.
And that was a great summary. And that was a great project. And we did land some fun new business and really connected the why for the company, the consumer, and our teams that were really executing that. So it was so fun. And to be at the Javits Center, to meet all of those retailers, to have those conversations. I mean, I was having conversations with Michael's and Toys R Us and Macy's, and I mean some really fun retailers. So a lot of fun to be had then.
Yep. And I'd only add one other quick thing, because I think this is important for your listeners. We had fun as a team. We worked hard.
So hard.
Because we had the passion.
Yep.
So we had the passion. We saw the goal. We had the vision. And I would tell you with 100% certainty that I still have great relationships at the National Retail Federation, and their senior leaders still talk about that.
I love that.
Talk about that program, that project, because really only a consumer packaged goods company could come in to an environment like that and just do something that was going to resonate. My favorite, and the videos on my consultancy website, where the CEO says, one of our most important and longest term members came up to me on day one of the Happiness Lounge and said, that Happiness Lounge is why I'm proud to be an NRF member. You just don't get sound bites. That's sort of like,
what an endorsement. Mic drop. We did our work here. Mic drop. Yes, a top 5 for my career as well. That was a great project. And so it was out of that experience, that work stream, those late nights, that project, that you and I really became so close and became great. And you mentored me. And as I was leaving the Coca-Cola company, you gave me some of the most solid advice anybody could give a person who is on their way out of a company. Do you remember what that was?
Yeah, I do. Because I just said it to somebody the other day.
Please share.
I think a version of what I said is this. as you start a new chapter, you're going to discover that folks that you think you can count on are going to let you down. And it's going to be really disappointing. On the other side is folks that you never thought of, or you may never have met, are going to pleasantly surprise you.
Yes.
And it's that balance that I think makes life the greatest reality TV show. That pretty close to what I said?
Yes. And it was so true. It wasn't necessarily some of the closest people that I'd worked with who were the ones calling and saying, hey, I know of an opportunity for you. But it was a customer who said, I saw a presentation you did once, and I know of another vendor who has an opportunity. It was a former colleague at the same company I had worked for that was now at a new company and found me on LinkedIn. We'd never actually met in person, but knew my track record, knew what I must be made of because I had worked for that company, and said, hey, I have an opening. Would you be interested in at least having a conversation? So, and I remembered so distinctly when you said that, it was like, wow, is this how this is going to go? But in the end, it really all does work out. So
it does. And it's funny that you brought that up because, again, I have some friends that are business friends. There's real friends, there's business friends, there's acquaintances. But I have some folks that, and we won't name names, there's been a lot of layoffs this year in our wonderful country. And there are folks that have never been impacted before. You and I could probably write a book together on that. But folks that haven't been through it before. And again, in the spirit of paying it forward, I'm happy to share. I'm happy to give back. And I just used that line with somebody the other day, a few months ago. And he reached out to me about a week ago and said, how did you know? I said, just experience. It's just how the human element works sometimes.
Yes. I think I lost count at 14 reorgs. So that's the number I go with. I went through 14 reorgs. So, yeah. Okay. So you leave the Coca-Cola company, you go do another thing, a couple other things, but then you end up making an entire industry shift. Yeah. I want to talk about this because it's remarkable.
We're talking about the little tech company?
That little small startup tech company you were working for. Wink, wink.
There's so much to unpack there, but I think in the spirit of keeping it succinct and tight and compelling, I gave a talk to a young professional group as part of the Atlanta Rotary here in Atlanta. And I was a few slides through my presentation and I said, this isn't landing because these people don't have enough battle scars yet. So they can't say, oh yeah, I remember that. They're still so early and so fresh. And I just shut my computer off. And I said, okay, how many of you would like to hear how I got a job at Microsoft? And I just told that story. And here's what I said. I don't have my phone near me, but I held up my phone. I said, these are evil. They play a role. I said, the key learning from how I got a job at Microsoft is you have to stay in the moment. You just never know when an opportunity is going to hit you. It could be the person sitting next to you on an airplane, or maybe you're waiting for a friend at the bar in a restaurant. You just strike up a chat with somebody. In my case, I was at a restaurant industry function. The primary reason for me to be there changed 10 minutes after I showed up to the opening reception. So I could have gone back to my hotel room and sulked and watched bad TV. 2, try and get an earlier flight. Or 3, you know what? I'm just going to go meet some new people and make some friends. Within 5 minutes, someone I hadn't seen in years came up, told me he was with Microsoft. We talked about that. And then he said, by the way, my boss is here. He's the opening keynote. You need to meet him.
Wow.
6 months later, COVID happens. I'm wondering what's next for me. And my LinkedIn goes ping. And it's that gentleman saying, hey, I'm putting a new team together and I would like to talk to you about joining us. Never saw it coming. And of course, I have to say this because it's one of the funniest lines I've ever heard. His name's Chris. He's just one of my favorite people. I said, Chris, I don't know. Yeah, I've kind of done the big company thing. I don't know if I want to do another big company. And he got quiet. He said, you're not going to do another big company. You're going to go do the biggest company on the planet.
The biggest company.
So it really was just that simple, Lori. It was stay open, be in the moment. You just don't know when opportunities are going to happen. And in this particular case, because I was able to articulate my value proposition in a compelling way, he remembered that. And without going deep on the opportunity, it was just a perfect fit for me. And I will tell you, when I posted on LinkedIn that I was joining Microsoft, the comments I received from people I've known for a long time were really very funny. Like, what do you know about tech? And more funny things like that. But you know,
Like, do you know how to turn on a computer?
you know what happens, and just a lot of funny things you can imagine. But you know what? To kind of bring it back to what we're talking about today, I said, you know what? I'm going to learn the same way I learned about brands at Coca-Cola. I'm going to learn more about technology, more about cloud, more about AI at the greatest university on the planet. And you know something? This is a customer-facing role. And I sure do know a thing or two about customers, whether they're buying cloud or soft drinks or financial services or wrenches. Customers are customers. And the playbook will work here. And it did.
And so, is that what you mean about your value proposition? Do you want to say a little bit more about that when you say, I knew my value proposition?
And this is feedback I've received, so it sounds smart, and I can't take credit for it. I've lived and really built my expertise at the intersection of customers and communication. And so what I mean by that is it's everything from how do we want to communicate to a customer in person, meaning a sales call? Maybe it's at an event or a conference. Maybe it's thought leadership being delivered on stage or through other medium. Maybe it's through advertising. But it's also engaging with customers and meeting them where they are, which everybody says these days, by the way, but I don't know if everybody really knows what that means. It's just one of those lines that everyone's using. But understanding how to meet the customer where they are, and we'll talk more about that, I think, in a minute or two. But being at that intersection and really understanding the power of engagement is my value proposition. And the fact that, again, back to the playbook, having that flexibility of seeing things, this is something you and I talked about a long time ago, seeing things horizontally. We, in the workplace, I think, and what I've experienced is we look at things vertically. Oh, you need to focus on convenience stores. Don't worry about grocery. I'm sorry, food retailers are food retailers. Pretty similar. And I know you've seen it in your journey. We look at things vertically. The opportunity when I joined this team at Microsoft with my colleagues were all industry experts with deep experience and wrinkles like me. The power and the value proposition that we brought to our operating unit, Microsoft, is we looked at things horizontally. What's happening in home improvement that might be relevant to restaurants? What's happening in grocery that might be relevant to traditional retail? And the sales teams, the enterprise sales teams could not get enough of what our team offered because they said, no one's talking to our customer this way. So the value proposition is looking for how you differentiate yourself and connecting those dots.
Yes.
When you connect those dots, then you have a really compelling story to tell because my experience, and I think you'd agree, at the end of the day, when a customer agrees to meet with you, they know they're going to get a pitch at some point, but when you surprise and delight them by showing up with insights and you show up with best practices and you're just informing and you stop and let them process, they will naturally, especially if it's something that gets their attention. I remember being in front of a national grocery chain. I'm not going to mention which one. And there was a fairly significant story about how Walmart leaned on Microsoft because they wanted to take their shopper experience, their online shopper experience to the next level of AI. And because of the partnership between Walmart and Microsoft, that was the first phone call. And there was a video clip of Microsoft CEO and Walmart CEO on stage. And I said, I have to play this for this grocer. And the account manager said, please don't do that. I said, well, I'm going to do it because it's insights, it's best practices.
And it gives proof.
It's proof it works. And as soon as the presentation was over, the senior person in the room for the customer looked at the account manager and said, I think it's 5 words. How do we get some of that? So that's Ira's value proposition. I've been at that intersection, and I think the ability to look at things horizontally, find commonalities, connect dots, and build a story without selling anything. Because if you're compelling and what you say resonates, it will come naturally. And that's, I think, the artfulness of what I fear might be missing out there today. Is we're jumping into the transaction and we're losing so much opportunity.
Yes, agreed. My grandfather used to say, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm just here to bring you some value. And if I don't have value, I don't want to waste your time or my time.
What do I say to that? It's perfect.
There we go. Right. Okay. So you have a playbook, you have a value proposition, and now you want to bring it to the world. You want to share what you've learned with the world.
Yep.
And here comes the moment when you write a book. So tell us about this book.
Well, here's the interesting thing. A lot of what I would say right now, we've already talked about. So it's just been,
I love that.
An organic. You know, what I'm learning is everyone has a book in them, maybe 2 or 3. This is something I always wanted to do. And, life gets in the way. You know, the expression, sorry, I won't be PC here. But the original way it was said to me is man plans, God laughs. So I should probably change it to people plan and God laughs.
Yeah.
But, I'm going to write it next summer. I'll write it at the beach. It just never happened. And it's probably good it didn't, because I needed more seasoning. I needed more wisdom. I needed to be kicked around a little bit more. I also need to see if the playbook would work. And when the playbook was working at Microsoft, that was validation that, okay, this isn't rocket science, but what I was seeing, Lori, as we talked about already, is I was seeing all the things that you and I were taught, all the training we received was being short shrifted, if that's a word, because we're all under pressures to meet the quarterly goal. We're all under pressure to meet the numbers. We're all under pressure to scale. And things were becoming more transactional. I was seeing that, and that's not to indict any previous employer of mine. And I validated that because, like you, a lot of my former customers are still friends. That says a lot.
Yeah, it does.
And I checked in with a few of them. I said, what's it like? And you can imagine the feedback.
Sure.
That I heard. So all that said, when I left Microsoft, I said, now's the time. And I just, as we say here in the South, I just hunkered down. I had a bunch of years of notes because I've given the Stewardship for Business talk a number of times. And every time I gave it, it's such a compliment. After you talk, you have the reception line, right? And inevitably there'd be 1, 2, 3 people that would say, do you have a book? No. You're going to write a book, right? Yeah, I'll write a book one day when I get older. But there was a defining moment that I won't waste time on, where after this conversation, I said, okay, now's the time. So the other key thing was I needed an editor. I needed a wingman, wing person, someone who would keep me on the straight and narrow. But the impetus for this was what we've talked about. It was my desire to take 25 years of insights and best practices in customer management and share it. But the packaging of it was so important because this will make you smile, I think. Nobody needs another 400-page sales training book in their life.
No.
So I intentionally wanted to create something easy to read, 103 pages. You can knock it out by the pool in the afternoon or on a flight or on a weekend if there's no good TV on. I wanted it to be conversational. I wanted it to be actionable. And I wanted to convey the 8 principles through storytelling. And I have to give my editor, Rob Baskin, a lot of kudos because I was having a lot of anxiety about, oh my gosh, this book's not going to be long enough. And he, to make me feel better, he, this was after dinner. He went back home, probably got a little help from ChatGPT, and sent me a list of the top 10 business books of all time by revenue. 5 of the top 10 were 100 pages or less. Number 1 is a book we've all read, Who Moved My Cheese? 99 pages, $28.6 million. He said, get over yourself. People will love, we're going to call this a playbook. And even if you didn't play sports, you understand what a playbook is. I'm going to read it, I'm going to understand, and I'm going to be able to go do stuff. So it was really the passion of, I want to share this, I want to pay it forward. And that's it. I just, one thing about people like you and me, when we focus, we really focus.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Once you put your head down,
watch out, world. And so you titled the book Stewardship for Business.
Mm-hmm.
And inside it is your playbook on how to kind of bring this trifecta together of really how to take relationships and this playbook of experience and this customer management to a whole new level. And who would you say is the audience that's ripe to read this book?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. Just real quick for a second, because one of the things I've learned since I was published mid-June, so it's basically been 3 months, time is just flying, is there's not a really terrific understanding of what stewardship means. And so I did some homework, and most people's understanding of stewardship really falls in 2 areas: religion and spiritual, and financial services. Like Joe, my banker, stewards my money. Everyone understands that. But when you look at the original definition of stewardship, it's all about taking care of something or oversight. And if you're a salesperson or an account manager, that resonates, right? Because you're being paid to take care of something, that relationship. And so what I tried to do is turn it on its ear a little bit and really take a little bit more of a business perspective. And so my definition is around communicating value, which we'll talk about in a second, I think, getting a competitive advantage. We used to say in my enterprise days, we're one RFP away from losing this business. And for those of you who don't know what RFPs are, they are requests for proposals, and it's a whole lengthy, painful process where you either keep your business or lose your business. And then the last piece of it is all around relationships and looking for ways to mutually grow the business together. So that's Ira's attempt to take a powerful concept called stewardship and bring it to customer management. Now, let me answer your question. I would say the bullseye target here are sales professionals, account managers, business development individuals, relationship managers, and entrepreneurs, startups.
Yes.
And why do I say that? The common thread there are customers and clients. And this is not, somebody asked me this at a virtual summit earlier this week. So this is a book for big companies and corporations. This is an enterprise book. And I said, no, I disagree. The power of these principles, Lori, is they apply to any size business, from a startup to a Fortune 50 company in any industry, selling either a product or a service. And if I could, a really quick way to pay this off is I sent a copy of my book to an individual, and he was excited to read it. And his wife is a veterinarian, very successful veterinarian in the city they live in. She has several locations, doing very, very well. And he came home from work, and she's sitting on the couch reading the book. After he asked her, why are you opening my mail? Was 2 chapters in and said, this is incredible. I never really thought about how can I bring insights and ideas? How can I take what I know to build my practice? And how can I take a little more time to understand the special relationship that my patients have with their pets? This is a veterinarian. And this individual said this to me. I said, well, you just paid off my point. The principles apply really to any business that has customers. And I think that's the power of it. But that's really the bullseye target.
I love that. And I think that in a very transactional world, and in a world that is moving so warp speed, it's easy to say that some of these things don't matter. Some of these principles might not matter. We're just going to skip over some of them to get right to the end, right? Yeah. It's like the proposal where the customer's just waiting for how much is it going to cost me. So let's just skip right to the last page. But no. We've got to do all of these principles that you're suggesting to really give the value we have to give in order to, as you said, meet the customer where they're at. We can't even know where they're at without 3 of the steps.
And some of your listeners may say, oh gosh, 7, 8 steps before I sell anything. That is absolutely not the case. It's really just a practical approach that's all around this one simple idea that I learned from a business owner at my first job in a shoe store in Western New York.
Love.
People buy from people they like and trust. How do I build trust? I demonstrate an interest in who you are. I demonstrate a hunger to understand your business. I go out of my way to demonstrate that no one's going to take better care of you than me and my company. And I'm looking for ways where we can grow the business together. I'm going to give you a win before I get a win. Because I know that if I do my job, one day I'm going to need some help from you, Mr. Customer, and you're going to say, I remember when you helped me. And that's what partners do. Because this is all about building trust and building partnerships. Because if you have built trust and partnership with your clients, you're insulated. Because, and you and I both experienced this at Coca-Cola, our customers would never envision going to anybody else because they felt that they were working with the best partner in this particular product category in the country. And you don't get there overnight. So there it is, very conversationally. It's those steps you take to build trust and partnership. Now, let's be frank, because I'm always frank. When you and I used to be very frank with each other.
Always.
Frank, there are a lot of businesses out there that do really well. They sell a commodity, they sell something that we all need. And on the B2B side, they sell things that are very much needed and they do very well. And a lot of these principles won't apply and they will have no interest. Hey, I've got my business and that's fine. I can't tell you what percent of the marketplace that is, but I do know I haven't run into too many people when I ask the question, are you creating real value for your customers? They can't really answer that because it's very subjective. But when I ask them, would you aspire to be considered a trusted partner? And not one person has told me no. Okay, let's talk about how we get there.
Right.
It's really just that straightforward. This is not a multiple page. This isn't a Gantt chart. This is just the steps that if you invest the time. I go back to my boss who ran the shoe store. If you show that you can be trusted and you take the time and invest it in people, they will like you and they will give you their business. It really is just that simple. Getting there is not simple.
Isn't it amazing how you and I both built a career on that very principle? Yes.
Betcha. Yep.
So, Ira, where can people buy your book and find you?
Yeah, thank you. Now's the time where I usually hold up a copy, but it's in another room. But Stewardship for Business is available on Amazon. You can find it very easily. There's a hardcover option just because I love hardcovers. Soft copy or paperback or for novels. This is a 104-page playbook. And there's an ebook for people that would prefer to listen to it. No, I did not narrate it. And unfortunately, I can't afford Morgan Freeman. So you're going to have to read it on your own. So it's on Amazon. And the other thing, how to find me, I'm on LinkedIn, very easy to find. You know, I'm a big fan of Deion Sanders and I love so many of his lines. And one is, I ain't hiding, I'm easy to find. But I did, if I may, real quick, there's going to be folks that read this book and they're going to want others to hear about it. And so one of the other things I'm really focusing on is how can I help organizations, businesses bring the principles into their business, to their peers, to their management, to their salespeople. So I have a lunch and learn executive briefing option where I'm happy virtually or in person to really just walk through a lot of what you and I've talked about today. And also rolling up sleeves. There's a half-day workshop and there's a full-day workshop that can be perfect for sales meetings, offsite planning meetings. And for those of your listeners that are always looking for speakers, I'm all about sharing the principles and telling some stories in that forum as well. So I feel so passionately about this. I I really just want to help folks be aware, embrace it, and help them bring the principles into their businesses. Sometimes you just need that little push and bringing in a third party to say, hey, let's talk about coverage plans and let's talk about opportunity customers and let's talk about why'd you lose that last piece of business and what can we do to help prevent that from happening again.
Exactly. So for all of you listeners, you could be lucky enough to connect with Ira and perhaps, schedule some time with him and his expertise. I mean, how fortunate are we here on the Joy CEO podcast to have the talent of Ira? My friend, what a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been great. I've really enjoyed. It's so much fun talking to somebody who's lived this and understands it, because I saw you smiling a few times. And quite honestly, a lot of the folks who have read the book, I've had some incredible feedback, but my favorite line as we wrap up here is he said to me, do you remember those bobblehead dogs that everybody used to have in the back of the car growing up? Or, and the dog would just do this. He said, that's what I did for 104 pages. Yep. Sometimes validation can be a beautiful thing. And let's be frank, none of what we've talked about today, Lori, is rocket science. It's just practicality and it's understanding the nuance of building relationships. So I appreciate all your kind words. You can tell I've got a lot of passion for this. And if in my own way I can pay it forward and just help folks win, because remember, you're a case study of this. The ability to effectively manage a customer relationship is a coveted skill.
Yes.
So that's the last thing your listeners should hear. We all like to win. We all want to get promoted. We all want to make more money, right? The ability to demonstrate that you can build trusted partner relationships is a coveted skill. People will want that. And I think that's the last important thing to share with you.
And that is a gift. It is something that you build over time. And you certainly need mentors like Ira to help you along the way. So I am so grateful that I have had you in my career journey, my friend. And it was a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.